Are you active on X? Are you active on Twitter?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, today's political climate is if I were to ask you right now, in your 20s or your 30s, okay, who would you have said was somebody that you looked at that influenced you politically or philosophically? What names would you give in your 20s or your 30s?
Well, Barry Goldwater.
Okay.
I grew up in Arizona, and Barry Goldwater.
Wow, what a name, Barry Goldwater.
Yeah. He was, his father was Jewish, and the original family name was Goldwasser. And they created a department store in Arizona called Goldwater's. And of course, Barry Goldwater went on to become a United States Senator. He ran for president. I greatly admired him. And
who else would you say?
Well, I think
that's a pretty heavy name.
Yeah, and I would think. Well, the first time I voted, I think I voted for Richard Nixon, but he ended up being a disappointment. When he left office. And
you were saying, meaning he should have never left office. That's what you're saying.
No, I'm saying that there was a scandal. He decided to leave office. I think he probably made the right decision. In fact, Barry Goldwater, I think, talked with him at one point and said, if this goes to impeachment, we don't have the votes to stop it. You're going to lose. And so Nixon decided to leave the White House, and he resigned. And I think later apologized belatedly for some of the things that he did in the David Frost interviews. So I would say when Richard Nixon was president and he opened the door to China, he created the EPA, he was very anti-communist, and he had his famous debates with Khrushchev. I greatly respected Richard Nixon and thought he was also a self-made man who came from nothing and made a great career for himself. He was a vice president under Eisenhower, who I greatly respected as a great general and a great president. And so I think that growing up, that was those were very important figures in my life. And also John F. Kennedy and the way in which he led the country at one point, that he
inspired you. He sold a vision to you.
Yeah.
We're going to land on the moon. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. It was an inspirational guy. But here's kind of where I'm going with it. Barry Goldwater, by the way, some will say he's the reason why Republicans lost the African-American vote. In 1960, I think, if I'm not mistaken, 64% of African Americans voted Democrat. The rest was Republican. After Barry Goldwater in 64, 92% of African Americans voted Democrat, and they lost him. And the story is two different things. Of course, one of the things has to do with the African Americans, but the other part is also MLK's wife. When they wanted to meet with Nixon, Nixon's camp never got back to him. John F. Kennedy's camp did. From that moment on, they said, we're going to be voting Democrat because Kennedy heard us out, but Nixon didn't. And then African Americans have been voting Democrat since then. The stories, when you hear about it, you read about it. They're documented. They're all over the place. But who did you fall for that spooked you and you were disappointed afterwards outside of Nixon? Who was your guy when you were watching and you're like, oh, my God, this guy's – and this is when you were impressionable. Think from 16 to 28. Who was the person where – because I'm thinking for myself as well with names, right? Who did you fall for where you're like, man – but later on, you're like, what? I fell for this trap. Did you have anybody?
The name that comes to mind for me is Nixon, because I can remember when Watergate started, I felt that he was being persecuted, that he was being wrongfully harassed, and I felt very strongly about it. But as Watergate unfolded, and it unfolded, it was on television. And so I watched the hearings, and I remember thinking, how can this be? And it was a very gut-wrenching, difficult thing, because here was this man that I had voted for and I had believed in, and it turned out he had made some pretty bad calls, which he would admit himself later.
Did it cause you to no longer want to vote that way?
No.
Okay.
No, I continued to vote for Barry Goldwater, and then later I voted for John McCain. who I greatly admired as well. I think Arizona has produced. This is my state that I grew up in. Though I spent quite a bit of time in New Jersey before moving back to Arizona. Arizona, given our population, we've produced some really big people that have been very prominent in American history.
You know who else said that in his book? Rob, can you pull up Billy Graham leadership? Type in Billy Graham leadership. There's a few questions I still got before we wrap up. We got time. Yeah, that one right there. I think it's in chapter 11 where he talks about betrayal. Can you go back and type in the leadership secrets of Billy Graham and then type in betrayal? Type in betrayal. I think it's chapter 11 or chapter 12. Check to see which one it is. PDF. Which chapter is the one where he talks about betrayal? Keep going down to see the content. Okay, chapter 12 is betrayal. In chapter 12 of that book, you know who he talks about that betrayed him and let him down? Nixon. To Billy Graham was also Nixon. Because it was the first time that he got behind a president. I think, Rob, can you control F Nixon and see if that's what he talks about? I don't want to misquote him. There you go. Yep. One of Billy Graham was painful experience was filmed betrayed by Nixon during the Watergate scandal. Graham had a close relation with Nixon and felt deeply affected by the revelation of Nixon's true character, which contrasted sharply with the image he held of him. Okay. So how old were you at the time when you went through this?
Teenager.
Okay, teenager. Perfect. That's great because bring that teenage Rick Allen Ross today. And back then it was news once a day. Whatever, 6 o'clock, 8 o'clock, I don't know what it was. But I was in Iran, so I wouldn't know. Okay, I don't even know if I was born yet. I'm born 78. So let's just say teenager. You're getting the news once a day. Now bring that Rick Allen Ross today, teenager, 16, 17 years old, Twitter, YouTube, Rumble, Instagram, TikTok. How the hell do you know if you're falling for this trap with some different people that are out there with messaging?
The way in which they respond to criticism. I think that if they are a reasonable leader, a good leader, that they will respond to criticism thoughtfully. They will answer directly about what they're being accused of or what issues are being raised, and they will put it to rest, and they will provide meaningful documentation, and they will deal with it. I think what disappointed me with Richard Nixon at one point was that he was attacking the messenger, and he wasn't dealing with the story itself. I mean, what happened? Were you involved in this break-in? Were you involved in the cover-up? I think there's some questions as to how deeply Nixon was involved in the actual break-in, but no question about how he would eventually be involved in the cover-up and other things. So I think the way in which a leader responds to criticism is a good way to understand who and what they are. Barry Goldwater, for example, he would acknowledge criticism. He would deal with it head on. I think he was a really good man, in my opinion, Barry Goldwater.
Did you ever meet him?
I never met him, but I met members of his family. And at one time, there were people in my community, the Jewish community, that were saying that Barry Goldwater was not good to the Jewish people, that he was somehow they implied, he was anti-Jewish or whatever. Nothing could be further from the truth. His best friend was a Jewish man that he grew up with, Harry Rosenzweig, who at one time was a leader in my own synagogue congregation. And he greatly admired Barry Goldwater as well. I think that what is so important is to not characterize people who don't agree with you as being somehow evil or terrible, but instead looking at what they have to say and considering it, and then taking it apart and explaining why you're opposed to it.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Rick Allen Ross, cult expert, intervention specialist, author of the book Cults Inside Out. You can find me on Connect.
If you enjoyed this video, you want to watch more videos like this, click here. And if you want to watch the entire podcast, click here.